Welcome to Guided by Third Wheel, the podcast. My name is Amber Ireland, and I'm here with my co-host, Jill Bucaro. Let's get started. Hey everybody, and welcome back to Guided by Third Wheel. Today, Amber and I thought we would talk a little bit about safety and creating safety, maybe seeking safety, finding safety. We are approaching the holidays. We are actually in the midst of the holidays. Right. What a wild fall it has been. I'll speak for me personally, and also I think just for our country and our world as a whole. A lot of us maybe are feeling in a space where we don't feel safe, where we feel uncertain or afraid or fearful. And that's just something that to me is worth unpacking. Yep. There are some things we cannot control, but there is a lot that we can about ourselves, about the people we surround ourselves with, the way that we approach each and every day. So we thought we would take that maybe struggle that a lot of us are feeling and put it through the lens of safety and talk about what is safety. How do we create it? How do we know that we're in a space that is safe and healthy versus a space that maybe is just familiar, and take it from there. So Amber, maybe start us off and tell us a little bit about how you discern or decide if you're in a safe space.
Normally after everything is falling apart and I'm like, that wasn't safe. I believe fall always is a time of change and transformation for a lot of reasons. We move into that state where we're starting to slow down. It's getting darker. The seasons are changing. But in our own lives, we find that too. During the fall, there is change. There is a bit of transformation there that is happening. And when that comes, often there is this period of time where there is a feeling where you're not really safe, right? Because it's the change. It's the unknown. It's what do I do?
How does that feel different? Because I think for me, when we talked about safety, I have a really hard time discerning between safety and familiarity. Like you said, I can always look back after the tower has fallen amongst the smoke and the rubble, and I can be like, oh shit, that was not a good situation, right? That was not a good relationship. That was not a good project to embark on. Those weren't the right people to surround myself with. They weren't safe. But I have a hard time in the moment discerning, does this feel okay to me because it is safe and healthy and supportive, or because it is familiar, right? Because I'm settling in to some nice childhood wounds, right? That, I think, to me, is the piece that I struggle with.
Yeah. As you were saying that, I started thinking about fear, anxiety, that sense of unease. And that is generally how I know that the safety that maybe I thought I created is external and isn't as safe or stable as I have tried to make it. Every time I go through change, there's always like a little bit of fear and anxiety. But when I dig into that for a moment and I say, okay, yes, this is scary, but I got this, then I know I'm in a safe spot.
Because you're willing to acknowledge
the fear. But when I get into a space where there's potentially change or there has been change and I'm afraid and I can't reconcile it to be okay, then it's always that I'm looking externally for my safety instead of internally for my safety. Because we talk about this a lot. Safe places, safe people in our life, all of that. And that's wonderful. And there are safe places and we can create safe spaces with other people. But we are all human and we are all flawed.
Yes.
So I can't put all of my safety into someone else. I can't say you are what makes me safe.
Yes.
I have to be what makes me safe.
Yes.
My discernment of who I am around is what makes me safe.
Yes.
Not who I am around. Not the space that I am in makes me safe. I make me safe.
Yes.
Right? So when I get into these places where I feel afraid or I feel like a change is coming and I'm anxious about it, if I can't reconcile it and say, okay, Amber, if all of this shit falls apart, are you going to be okay? If I don't feel like that, if I'm picking apart, but if this goes away, then what? And then this, and then what? Right? I've put my safety in something outside of myself.
Well, and I wonder, and I'm going to try to articulate this because it's just forming in my brain based on what you're saying and as I'm kind of reflecting myself. To me, I think a reaction to feeling unsafe is to try to seek safety and control externally, right? Because sometimes the act of looking inward and being like, something is not right here. Something is not clicking. This job is not serving me. This relationship is not serving me. Something feels off.
Right.
That, at least for me, is very hard to do and to acknowledge. So instead, I start hyper-focusing externally to avoid the internal confirmation and acknowledgement, right? I start hyper-focusing externally and being like, let me just ask this person 15 times if they're feeling okay in this relationship and they're not planning on leaving me, right? Because that should give me the security and safety that I need, right? Or let me just try to make sure every single thing at work is absolutely perfect and every task is checked off the to-do list. Because if that's all done, then we don't have a problem, then we're safe. So I wonder if an indicator could be that super consistent and almost pathologic hyper focus on the external is a cue that maybe you need to look internally and start to ask some questions.
And while you were saying that, I was thinking perfectionism.
Okay.
When we get into this space of trying to make sure all the pieces fit exactly right, when we are trying to control and perfect everything, that might be a sign that I'm putting my safety externally instead of internally. Because I'm trying to control everything, and if I do this in this relationship and I ask the right questions and if I show up in the right way, then everything will be fine, right? But internally, I'm feeling like something is off. But let me just create all of the safety stakes out here.
Yes.
Instead of saying internally, okay, I am safe. If this person decides to leave, I'm safe. Will I be sad? Sure. Will there be feelings? Sure. I'll move through that. It'll be fine. I'm okay, I'm safe. But if I start looking at that and, oh my God, if this person leaves, then I'm not going to have anywhere to live, and where is the rest of my money going to come from? And who, I'm going to be lonely, and what is everybody else going to think? And certainly that means I'm a shitty person because somebody else left me.
Right.
Then I put my safety in all of those external things and my identity in all of those external things instead of saying, I can't control that.
Yes.
I can't control that. I can just do what I can do.
Yes. That's so interesting that you said that, because the counter of it is, if you're willing to acknowledge, if this person leaves, I guess I'll be okay. If you're willing to, I don't want to say like think through that, because I don't think you should be like catastrophizing all the time, right? But if you're willing to like have those thoughtful conversations and look inward, perhaps that's an indicator that it is safe, right? That you're even able to look at it and think about it and examine it, just even consider it. For me, one of my biggest defense mechanisms is dissociation. I mean, I can click out of reality and live on another planet for literal weeks at a time. It's actually an incredible superpower of mine, and has led to a lot of problems in my life. But, really when I look at it, this is actually incredible, Jill, the way that you are able to just entirely check out of existence and everyone else still thinks that you're there. When you are so focused externally, when you're unwilling to even consider or think through the things you're most scared of, that makes me think, wow, perhaps this isn't a safe place. And conversely, so I'm in a relationship now that feels very different than other relationships I've been in. And I have those thoughts, what if this doesn't work out, right? What if these differences just are not reconcilable? What if he goes this way and I go that way? And I think about it. I have feelings about the either outcome, but it's not this absolute panic shutdown. I refuse to even think about that, right? And will spend all of my time out here organizing, controlling, and managing. I'm able to have those conversations not only with myself, but with him, which to me is a cue. This is a safe space, right? Because we're grounded, we're thinking, we don't have to pretend everything is perfect. We don't have to expend all of our energy trying to make everything perfect. We're able to really think through and identify both the positives and negatives of what's going on around us. Because it's safe enough to do that. Because it's not a house of fucking cards. That's where I felt so many times before, is one wrong move, one wrong word, and it will all come crashing down. And if that is true, if one wrong move or one wrong word could make it all crash, then that's not safe.
No.
Period. Interesting.
In relationships too, we talked about finding that safety internally does not mean that when I'm in a relation with other people that I don't have conversations with them, right? About what I'm feeling, how I'm feeling about the relationship, what my expectations are, those types of things. But also, internal safety opens you up to be like, okay, I don't have such harsh lines in the sand for every single thing. Now, I do have hard lines in the sand, like punch me in the face. Yeah, no, this isn't what we're doing.
Yeah.
There are hard lines in the sand, but I don't have as many hard lines in the sand that aren't about my actual safety.
Yes.
Right? I don't have so many hard lines in the sand around how you think about something and how I think. If it's not the same, then I'm open to hear why you think what you think, as long as you're open to hear my side of it, right? I want there to be a give and take there. That feels safe to me, opposed to if you don't think this, then we can't be in relationship together at all.
Well, because I think you're operating from a space of groundedness rather than a space of fear, right? What I didn't say about this relationship, it's not a fancy, rare unicorn came prancing down the street, save me and create a safe space for me. I think the difference here is that I, for the first time in my life, these last couple years, have created safety for myself.
Right.
And I wonder, until you're able to have those honest conversations with yourself, until you're actually in a space where you can look inside and think about some of that, are you even able to create safety with other people? I don't know if you can be at a space where you're not cool with you. I lived the vast majority of my life, if I was locked in a room alone with just me, I was not safe because I was not kind to myself. I was unwilling to have those hard conversations. I was unwilling to acknowledge some of the more negative things I was thinking or feeling. I was not safe for me. And I wonder if you are in a space where you are not safe for yourself, can you ever create or find relationships that are truly safe? I don't know.
I think you can create safe spaces with other people, but maybe not as deep as what you could when you find safety for yourself, because you don't understand it.
Right.
Until you do it for yourself, you don't fully understand it. So you can only give what you fully understand.
Yes.
I can only give as much as I understand within myself.
Yes.
I can only see as much as I can see within myself. You do have to do some inner work in order to have deeper relationships. I mean, you can't have relationships at all. No, you can absolutely. All of us know ourselves enough to have a relationship with another human being, right? But if you want those deep connections, if you want those more safe spaces with other people, you have to find that safety in yourself. You have to know yourself enough to know that I see my humanness and I also understand that you have a humanness too, right? It's kind of like we talked about a couple podcasts ago around being parented and then becoming a parent and seeing yourself as a human in that role.
Yes.
You start to have a little bit more empathy and understanding for your parents.
Yes.
That they were also human too, and they were also flawed the same way you are.
Right.
When you understand that about yourself, you understand that about another human being,
Right.
and you're able to be more safe with that person and not so judgmental.
No, that makes a lot of sense. It's interesting. I didn't think that when we were talking about safety, we would talk, I just keep thinking about fear, right? Because I think a lot of times we keep ourselves from safety because of fear. Right. And I wonder if that's where some of the familiarity piece falls into as well. What do I always say? Like, none of us get to be however old we are without some trauma, right? Without some shit, without some emotional baggage. You don't get to make it through this world if you live long enough without getting hurt. And I think sometimes we get hurt in certain types of ways, a lot of times when we're younger or when we're teenagers. And that is when we're still, we're not going to get into like brain science and all that. But it gets to a place where that hurt, although it didn't feel good, created this roadmap for what feels familiar.
Right.
At least for me, I think of some of those, whether they're core wounds, whether they were unhealthy relationship patterns, right? That I experienced, that I observed, that feels normal. That's what we're used to. That's what literally my brain says, well, this is how people communicate. This is how people deal with hard feelings. This is how people deal with sad feelings.
It is that, and it's also, I know how to navigate it this way. I've seen it, so I know how to navigate it this way. That feels safe because I already know all the steps that need to be taken. We have a knockdown, drag out fight, then this happens, and this happens, and this happens, right? I know that pattern, so I'm willing to engage in that pattern again because
I know how to do it.
I know how to do it. You know how to do it and you know you don't like it, but you don't know another pattern. You've not seen another pattern. You've not engaged in another pattern. So you're like, well, this doesn't feel safe over here because I don't know what the next step is.
Yes, and I think sometimes we encounter these almost forks in the road or these decisions or how am I going to engage with this situation, with this person, etc. And you have a choice to do something like, well, this isn't great, but I know how to do it.
Right.
I've done it before.
Right.
Or you have a chance to perhaps do something in a safer way, in a more vulnerable way. And that's where I think this fear piece comes in, right? Because it could be better, but I'm scared. But it feels uncomfortable. Or it could be 1,000 times fucking worse. At least I have seen this play to the end, right? Like I have seen this show before. And although it is not my favorite show, I know how it ends. And I think it's overcoming that fear. There's this final crest that you have to summit and overcome in order to get to safety.
Right.
And you have to move through that discomfort, and almost coming back to what you're talking about at the end, you have to be able to sit with yourself and be like, damn, this feels weird.
Right.
It's not necessarily bad. Like going back to this relationship, there were times this summer where I'm just like, this just feels uncomfortable.
Yep.
Not bad, but not good. I'm not getting the hits of adrenaline. My cortisol isn't pumping. I don't know how this movie will end.
Right.
And thankfully I've done enough work where I'm like, well, damn, Jill, I mean, you've seen the other movie a lot of fucking times. Maybe it's time to check out a different one. I think we would be remiss if we didn't identify that there is some fear and discomfort along the road to safety, particularly safety with yourself, because it's gonna be different.
We talked about doing that inner work and finding that safety within. But the second I go back to interacting with someone else in relation that I perceive should be safe or should provide me with safety externally, because that's what I've been told, especially intimate relationships should be providing with safety. Family relationships should be providing with safety. The second I go back into that, it feels uncomfortable and I have to make a decision to keep myself safe opposed to, oh, all right, this feels comfortable. Let me just fall back.
Let me get back in the muck. I think there are certain people in our lives, I think a lot of times that's family, exes, or people that remind us of ex-intimate partners. I always call it getting back in the muck, you know? And I'm not getting in there with you. I know how to do, like I can sling muck better than anybody, but I just don't want to fucking do it anymore.
Yeah.
And I think those are the decisions that you have to start to make.
Right.
Am I going to compromise this groundedness, this safety by getting back in there with you? It's also that discernment of, I am feeling uncomfortable. Am I feeling uncomfortable because I'm doing a new, different, and potentially healthy thing? Or am I in a good spot and I'm feeling uncomfortable because somebody's trying to drag me back into the dysfunction? And hopefully we get to a space, which I don't think I'm necessarily there at this moment in time, but I think the goal would be to move into a space that the old familiar dysfunction feels uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But understanding that perhaps the newer, safer functioning will also feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Because you
gotta shift it. You gotta shift through it. And that's where I just wish somebody could just give me a magic wand and the gift of 2020. Because I'll say that to my therapist. I'm like, I don't know if I'm uncomfortable because this is bad, or I don't know if I'm uncomfortable because this is good. You know what I mean? And how do we work through that?
And I always assume now, not before, but I always assume now that if I feel uncomfortable, that whatever it is, I just need to lean into it because I'll figure it out, right? If I can just lean into the discomfort a little bit, if I can just sit with it and why do I feel uncomfortable? What am I afraid of? As soon as I know what I'm afraid of, I'm like, oh, this is good. Nope, I'm not afraid of that anymore, right? I'm not engaging, right? We're rolling in, well, we've had Thanksgiving, I think, at this point, but that this podcast comes out, we're rolling into Christmas, we're spending a lot of time with family, and we do a lot of our own work for a long time, and then the holidays come. Here I am with all my boundaries, I am ready, here I am just trying to be authentic and living in the moment, and we walk back into that house, we walk back into that place, and it's like, I could just melt right in here with these folks, right? I know how to do it. It'd be so much easier than them asking me, why aren't you doing this? And why aren't you doing that? And why? And
you seem
why
weird. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Do you feel okay? Yeah. Being around people who knew you best when you weren't who you are now is always tough. But I know for me too, I give myself perhaps some false sense of safety with a lot of like external routines and patterns. I am a girl. I thrive in a consistent environment. I like to be at home. I do not like to travel too much. I've traveled a lot this fall and it has me really spiraling out of control. The holidays also disrupt our normal routines, whether it's our normal eating, whether it's making sure we're drinking enough water, whether it's our exercise routines or our self-care routines. All of that is disrupted in November and December. Even if you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, Christmas, the way work moves, the way the world is in these 2 months is disruptive. And I know for me, my inner safety is cultivated by some of my external patterns. And those are disrupted.
Yeah.
During the holidays, they just are.
Yeah.
So how do you hang on to that and continue, like you said, to refrain from just, I will eat cookies, I will eat brownies, I will not drink water, I will fight with my mom, I will go at it with my grandma.
And then I'll start the cycle all over again in January.
Yeah, and then in January, I have to pick up the goddamn pieces of all of this, as opposed to like, how do I try to just maintain some inner safety for myself?
Yeah. I think that probably happens for the majority of people. And I think as we're moving into fall and into winter, there is an opportunity for us to change in a different way. Yes. But oftentimes, because everything is so patterned during that time, and there are so many people that are engaging in the same churn that we engage in every year, it's hard because we just kind of fall back into it because we're like, okay, well, here it is. And even people that love the holiday season and they just really get into it and they love it are still getting pulled into that churn where they're getting pulled off kilter a little bit. Yes. Because of the holidays. For everyone, really, people that really enjoy it, people that don't enjoy it, you come off of that holiday high in January, a lot of that seasonal depression starts popping in because it's like, okay, now all of this hustle and bustle that you've just been experiencing for the last 6 or 8 weeks is gone. You are alone with your thoughts.
Ooh.
And with everything that has happened during that 6 to 8 weeks, whether it's been good or bad. And now here you are again, go back to work, go back to whatever you feel like maybe your mundane life was after the holidays and have to pick up the pieces again. That's why we see a lot of people setting resolutions because we are coming out of that really high place from the holidays. High energy, whether that be a good high energy or a bad high energy, you're coming off of it at the end. And I think for myself, I've lived 10 more years than you have. So maybe Thanksgiving Day, Christmas Day, those days are different, but I am not available to let any of that disrupt my inner work that I do every day to remain grounded, to remain connected, to create my sovereign safe space. I am not available to not do that every single day, regardless if it's the holidays or not.
Yeah.
But does that mean that maybe that changes a little bit? If I don't have to work, am I going to get up at 5:30 in the morning and do that? Maybe not. Am I going to do it the same way that I always do it? Maybe not, because the days look different, but I am going to do it. I am going to prioritize that time for myself. I am going to reconnect with myself every single day and make sure that I am living presently and authentically every single day, and that before I go to the holiday function, I feel grounded.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not just running off of the last 72 hours of holiday high without rechecking in with myself. And when I think about safety, that is my safety.
Right. And that's what I was going to say. You are in a space where your safety truly is internal, right? If you are, like we talked about at the beginning, trying to build this structure of safety externally, of course that's going to be washed away when routines are messed up, when other people that are like your quote unquote safety net or safe people are stressed because the inevitable fuckery that comes along with this season. And that's a good reminder that you are operating from a place where your safety is internal. One, you have to protect that, right? And two, it doesn't matter as much what's going on around you because it's coming from an internal kind of space.
And what I look at around me, just in general, I feel like I am my own safe space. And when I look around me and I see things that I feel some kind of way about, I just recognize that that isn't mine. I can participate in that or I cannot participate in that. I can allow that to create misery for me or I cannot. I get to choose. And sometimes I do. I choose to jump in the mix and I'm like, let me sit in here and be amped up about this thing. And sometimes that feels good, right? Especially when in the line of work we do where you're advocating and you're trying to stand up for a cause. Sometimes that feels good. But I also recognize that is external to me.
Yes.
Right? And so I can disengage from that whenever I need to and go back to who I am and not have to hold on to that as an identity, as a safety net, as what other people see me as in order for me to be safe and important in the world.
Yes, that is so fair and so true. And I think too, when we're looking ahead, one thing that Amber and I are going to do again this year that we did last year is what we call 60 Strong.
Yeah.
It's kind of like our social worky self-care take on 75 Hard, where...
But you don't have to be a social worker to participate.
No, it's just like a social working mindset, I would say. Actually, I don't know of anybody who is... A couple social workers besides you and me.
Maybe more social workers should participate.
I was going to say, we didn't have as many social workers as we probably should. But anyways, yeah, it's kind of like our self-care take on the 75 Hard, where you identify some habits that you want to start the new year with. And obviously, a lot of people pick some around health, nutrition, drinking water, things like that.
Right.
We really say like they shouldn't all be fitness related.
Right.
And I think in the context of this conversation, to me, they need to be habits that are going to help cultivate that internal safety, right? Not how do I build my perfectionist, check all the check boxes, you know, little structure of safety around me, but how do I really start to build some inner resiliency? So keep an eye out for 60 Strong. I think in our next episode, we're going to talk a little bit more about goal setting, our goals, the deets for 60 Strong.
Yeah.
But we'll look to start that probably the first week of January. Understand. Hopefully, we stay strong all holiday season and don't need recovery space. But chances are we'll probably all need a little bit of it. And quite frankly, January and February, there's not a whole lot else going on.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't we spend that time working on ourselves?
Yeah. And pouring in. We talk about seasonal depression or, you know, whatever you want to call it. There is just a time of the year where it's like a little darker, it's a little slower, that's uncomfortable for people. You start getting in your head. And what a better time to really prioritize getting in your head and moving through it opposed to just sitting and ruminating in stuff and not really knowing what to do with it and praying for the summer months to come so that you don't have to do it anymore.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm interested to know if there was anything that we did in 60 Strong at the beginning of this year that you are still doing almost consistently.
Yes, message us if there is something you're doing.
But what are you doing, Jill?
What were my goals? I mean, my water intake is incredible. Let me just say that. So I did a 75 Hard challenge a little over a year ago. So maybe 5 months before we did our 60 Strong, where I drank a gallon of water every day, which was insane. But ever since then, your body gets addicted to water. Let me tell you that. And I did that challenge. And then quickly after that, I did the 60 Strong challenge. I mean, I drink water like there is no tomorrow. And when I have days where I don't, it is as if my body is disintegrating into nothing. What about you? What are you still doing?
I read almost every single day.
Nice.
That's what I started doing in January. And before that, I listen to some podcasts, I listen to audiobooks, I consume some material. But every morning I get up and I do my meditation and my journaling and I go and I read. I've read, 20 books this year or something. I've read a lot of books. And it's been wonderful. I look forward to it every day. The other thing, I don't know if I put this in 60 Strong. I think I did. That I was going to post on social media every day.
Yes, you did put that in.
And I
60
have.
Strong.
I mean, I missed maybe a couple days here and there, probably because I've been on vacation or whatnot. Every once in a while, I just get the message that what I pulled was for me and it was not for everyone else. Don't put that out there in the world. But for the most part, I've been more active on my Instagram. Not on all social media platforms, but on my Instagram account. I can't remember what else I put on there either. Oh, not weighing myself, which I I did not weigh myself through the entire 60 Strong, and then really only between then and now, maybe like 20 times I've weighed myself. I mean, that's like a long time.
So like maybe once a week, once every other week kind of.
Not even once a week. Sometimes
That's
I'll
good
go an
for you.
entire month without
That's good.
doing it. All of that is healthy. Some of that is fear-based.
Stop. I did. I remembered one other one I did was only do a number of sweets per week, or I think I only did one sweet per day.
Yeah.
Just sad that had to be a goal for me, but it did. And I would say I have been a lot better about reducing my sugar intake.
I did no online purchasing, which, let me just tell you, after 60 Strong was over, I had carts of things that were sitting that I did not purchase during that time. And, but I have taken a couple months of making a conscious effort not to buy things online.
So with that and our quick little reflection on our 60 Strong goals, we will leave you guys wishing you lots of strength and peace these next couple weeks as we navigate this season, and we'll catch you next time.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Guided by Third Wheel, the podcast. We would be honored if you would like, rate, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, be well.